Welcome, everybody, to the interview series, Leaders of Purpose. I'm Marilena Timoteo, and together we're going to be setting off on an exciting journey to meet some of the most inspiring women leaders who have dedicated their careers to driving positive change in the world. And hopefully we can learn from their wisdom they gain through their journeys. So today I have the pleasure to actually welcome one of the most inspiring founders of the Berlin nonprofit ReDI School of Digital Integration, Anne Kjær Bathel. Welcome, Anne. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
So before we go and dig deeper into our interview, I'd love to give just a little short introduction. So Anne, since 2016, you actually launched 9 ReDI schools. And this year with your team, you've managed to offer free education, tech education to around 6,500 students, out of which of them actually 65% are female students, which is quite a milestone in the tech world, I must say. And you've been able to grow the company to 107 people across 30 countries. And the word on the street is that actually congratulations is in order, as you won the Digital Future Award at the CIO of the year's 2023. Congratulations. You must be very, very proud. Quite a milestone.
Thank you so much. I think I'm still pinching my arm a little bit, but yeah, it's just wonderful.
No, fantastic. And finally, as on a personal level, you've mentioned that actually in your personal time off, you spend for 10 years now, you've been practicing the Japanese flower arrangement practice, which I didn't know about, ikebana. And if you weren't busy enough in actually running your nonprofit, you also managed to renovate an 150-year-old farmhouse during COVID times. So it says a lot about you and how you could achieve so many things.
Yes, it's wonderful to both be fully digital and fully analog at the same time.
Amazing. Well, and I think the best way to start our journey together is to ask you, what is the change that you want to bring to the world, and how do you foresee doing that?
I think the best way to really start is I come from a family where being involved even from an early age as a child in conversations about politics and about society has always been really important. And my family, so if you go 2 generations back, were refugees fleeing from Germany back in 1933, because my grandfather was a pacifist and his father was also a pacifist, printing magazines and books, speaking up out in public against Hitler back then. So I've grown up with the story that you have to stand up for the change that you want to see, and you need to inspire other people to follow. So I guess it's something that just runs so deep in my family, is to stand up for peaceful coexistence. And unfortunately, that is still a topic now, almost 100 years later. But we still keep doing the work, and I'm just happy to contribute in whatever little way that I can.
Oh, amazing, amazing. Well, we all seek purpose in our life, right? My question is was that purpose, you mentioned it came from your family and your history, but was it evident to you from the beginning, or was it something that kind of unveiled itself over time?
It definitely wasn't something where I sort of had this image in my mind, this is the entrepreneur that I want to become. I would say rather quite the opposite. I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur. But I did start at a very early age, like running projects, I would call it. So I started off first in the Danish school system and then later in the Norwegian school system. But in Scandinavia at school, it's quite normal for teenagers to be inspired to run projects and to start calling local libraries or calling local politicians and ask them if you can interview them. And so did I. So I started relatively early on reaching out and asking people for help. And since I was 12, I guess I've been a small entrepreneur running small projects, and the projects got bigger and bigger with time, and eventually also realized that for this to really grow and to scale and have the potential impact that it could have, then I also needed to found an organization and find the money needed in order to both pay myself and also to pay staff. So I still can't quite believe that I am an entrepreneur, but I guess winning the CIO award and running my own company with more than 100 staff, I well and truly am. But my self-understanding is not like, I never set out I want to run my own business. I wanted to make an impact on the world and stand up for what I believe in. And that's also what I'm doing.
Amazing. What a magical journey until now, and what will come.
Yes, let's see. I'm excited too.
Amazing. Well, I mean, I know there's a lot to be proud of, and it's a difficult question to ask, but what is the thing that you're most proud of until now?
Oh, there's so many experiences and on so many different levels. When I started ReDI School, it was really based on a conversation that I had back in 2015 with a young refugee called Mohammed from Iraq, who had just arrived in Berlin at the time, but he didn't have a laptop. So he was scared of losing his skills. And that's how the idea of ReDI School came about. And everything since then has been co-creation with the newcomers arriving in Germany. And the reason why I'm saying that is I was just earlier this afternoon, I was texting with Mohammed because there was an article in the news where I was also explaining the story of how we started. And it was just nice to write Mohammed a message and sort of check in with him and see how he's doing. He's now working as a developer full-time for Accenture, and he's in a good job. He's well integrated. So that in itself, just seeing what a difference that makes in his life and how he's also able to be a role model for other people to follow in his steps is definitely something that makes it worthwhile. But on the other hand side, I'm just so happy to have a dedicated staff. I think anyone who is leading people knows how difficult that can be and what a responsibility that is. And it's just a joy to see what the team is able to create, also very much without me. I think it's probably the best thing for a leader is when you can see that people are succeeding and I had nothing to do with it. They just go and do amazing work, and that makes me extremely happy.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it reminds me of a quote that great leaders create other leaders. And it seems that's exactly what you've been able to achieve.
At least I'm trying to.
At least you're trying to, yeah. So actually talking about leadership, what do you think is your biggest challenges that you face as a leader in achieving your goals?
I think my biggest challenge is definitely taking breaks and taking enough breaks. Anyone who's a leader and who runs a business knows that you can work around the clock 24/7, but we also know that that's not a wise thing to do. And I really do believe that innovation and truly good ideas also appear when there's space for them. So I do try with everything I can to hack my own calendar. I try to make sure I take holiday and break. I try to be a good role model also for my team as well. But it is really hard to do when you have an inbox that is sometimes overflowing, and you had a lot of wonderful ideas yourself and people reaching out and wanting to do good things. Really knowing when to say no, but having the farm and being able to spend time in nature, and also, I mean, with my Ikibanas, really, it's my best tool that I have for making sure that I stay mindful and present in what I'm doing, and take those breaks, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, I guess. But I do need to remind myself, and we need to remind ourselves in the team to take breaks.
Definitely. I think burnout is one of the most common unfortunate effects that leaders face, especially in the world of impact, where you have so much depending on you, and taking those breaks and putting those boundaries can be difficult, but it's essential. Like you said, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and having that mindset is so key in order to remember that in order to deliver your value, you need to look after yourself. You're your biggest asset, so you need to look after yourself. Thank you. So my next question is actually, yeah, there are all these challenges as a leader, right? But what do you think is the ingredient you found to be a successful leader in the field that you are?
I think it's several things, and it's always hard to sort of look at yourself. So probably the best thing is sometimes to ask my team or my husband what that truly is. But now you're asking me, and I do think that the key to my success and ReDI School success is really in co-creation, being in the DNA from the very beginning of ReDI School. I already talked about talking to Mohammed in the very early days, and that is how ReDI School started. Then Mohammed brought 2 friends, and I brought 2 friends, and then all of a sudden we were 6 people developing the idea together, and then they were bringing friends next time, and it had this organic growth, but always on a very personal level, that people were bringing their friends because they were believing in the overall cause of what we were trying to build together. So that really is essential for me. I also studied like design thinking, you would probably call it, or human-centered innovation. And of course, the core in that is always understanding what the human desire or the human need is. And then you build services or you build products around that. And the only way to really truly understand what is desirable for people is to talk to them. You can get a lot from research and numbers, but what people do and what they say they will do is it can be two different things. So I am really a very strong believer in, I guess you would also call it participatory development work. It sounds very big, but at the core of it is people talking together and building things together and getting feedback, improving on your ideas until it fits, and then see if you can scale it from there.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, co-leadership is such an important element. It's something that a lot of leaders think they need to have all the answers to all the questions, but actually it's so liberating when you realize that, you know, you have all these resources, this collective intelligence that you just need to optimize, right? And allow them to have the space to contribute and co-create with you.
Yeah, true. I really think I mean, I guess it's the leader's biggest role is to ask really good questions. It's not always easy, but I do think that that's what brings people together, and really make sure that we ask for help. Because it's one thing that I realized over the last at least 10 years is people get really happy when you ask if they can help you, because they're like, oh, I can help you. You have recognized me, that I have something to give, and they get really flattered by it. And I think that's just truly wonderful, because of course you shouldn't fake it, but if you have a real question, go out and ask.
Yeah, showing that vulnerability as a leader is something I think we need to learn a little bit more. We have this like taintness that it shows weakness, but I think, yeah, like you said, it creates this connection between people, and it allows them to bring their best selves to deliver value to the team and to the purpose.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Well, I mean, one of the things that I know I've experienced, and I think a lot of people in our audience would be experiencing, is that we all start with a big dream, and then reality is a little bit different. So I was wondering, what was your biggest wake-up call that you experienced in your pursuit of your purpose?
I think that by far the biggest challenge for me has always been around how do you build a business to support your social purpose. But a business in the sense, I mean, ReDI School is a fully nonprofit, but of course to pay myself and to pay staff, you need money, you need funding somehow. And that can be really, really hard to figure out how exactly that works. And it did take time for me. The first organization or project that I built was called Kids Have a Dream. And I started it straight out of graduating from university in 2006. And it was running very successfully for almost 10 years, but always as a hobby, because I was not able to turn it into something that could generate enough funding that I could pay myself. So it was always something that I was doing on top of working as a consultant, which meant evenings and weekends. And it was nice, and it had an impact on 4,000 kids around the world. So like it did a good job, but it never was able to truly unfold its potential because I didn't have enough time, and I couldn't even hire anyone to be in support of me, at least not as a paid job. And I think that has really been the biggest challenge. It still remains a huge challenge to figure out just how do you scale a social enterprise when there's no venture capital that you can go out and get, because there's no financial return on investment because we're a nonprofit. So you need to be cash flow positive from day one if you want to pay yourself a salary. So I like to call social entrepreneurship kind of the I don't know what you would call it. Well, the wild sport, what do you call it? Extreme sport or extreme version of being a startup, because it's not bootstrapping. It's like next level of bootstrapping. And that's not easy. We were able to get really, really good support from Stefan and Joanna Breidenbach, who helped us raise the 12,500 euros that is needed to start a nonprofit. So Gemeinnützige GmbH in Germany. And without them, I don't think we would have been here where we are today. So having some, not angel investors, but just let's call them angels, supporting has been extremely, extremely helpful.
Yeah. So would it be your advice for anyone that's looking into going into social entrepreneurship? Is it finding those evangelists, those angels to help you persevere through and overcome those challenges? Or are there other ways that you found that could be new potentials that maybe with a bit of change, there's a bit of hope?
So like I also said, that the core ReDI School is about co-creation, and the co-creation always comes from the community. So I would advise any budding social entrepreneur to go out and build your community, because through that connections, this is probably where you could find the angels who are able to invest in you, or you will gather together as a group, and you can raise the funding that is needed to start a GmbH. Or, I mean, there are other options as well. You can be an IV or a GUG in Germany, which is a little bit cheaper. But like really creating a supportive community around you, so you're not carrying the burden yourself, is absolutely necessary. And also the smart thing to do, because the more co-creation you can do with potential future beneficiaries, I think the better product or service you're going to create as well.
Definitely. You're also validating your own belief system, your own, you don't fall in love with your own solution. There's someone else willing to put in skin in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like, through the journey, there were the obstacles, there were the challenges. What has been maybe the hardest moment that you've experienced in your journey? And how did you deal with it? Like, how did you overcome it?
So I think for me, and it probably says a lot about sort of my way of leading as well, is always like the hardest for me is always when people don't fit the team, and you have to separate ways. Because I very, very strongly believe in human development and investing in my team and wanting a very, very diverse team of skills and people. But sometimes it just doesn't work out for whatever reason, and you need to go two separate ways, and that can be a very unpleasant experience for both parts. But I think it is necessary. It's part of being a leader as well, to make those decisions. But it's definitely for me the hardest part, because I will be very stubborn in trying to figure out if there is a way, but sometimes there just isn't. So I think that for me is definitely the hardest days, where I just need to realize that it's best for both parties to go two different ways and figure out how to do that in dignity and full respect. I think the best advice I ever got when it comes to hiring is don't hire anybody who you wouldn't sit next to on a 24-hour long-haul flight to Sydney. So it's become kind of a little bit of a joke in the end, but it is kind of the last question that we ask ourselves before hiring a new team member for the ReDI School team is, would we sit next to them on a long flight? And if the gut feeling is telling us, no, maybe not, then better not hire. I think that's long-term the better solution.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that saying. It's going to stay in my mind for a while.
It's a good one.
It's a really good one. Well, I mean, talking about choosing the right people, I mean, especially when you're in impact, you're often dealing with chaos, right? With emergencies. And I know you mentioned in the past that you studied chaos yourself. How do you deal with chaos, and maybe how do you support also your team in achieving that? What are the skills that one needs to have in order to persevere in such a chaotic environment?
Oh, that's a really good question. I did indeed study chaos. I have a background as a chaos pilot. That's a 3-year leadership education in Denmark. And then I went on to study peace studies. So I guess I'm a master of chaos and peace. I think that's a good combination to have to keep the balance. So what I do with my team is of course, to be very open and transparent about uncertainty. And not pretend that I have answers, but I will have a process that will lead us to an answer. So leading in times of change is what I have been trained to do for a long time. It is what I have practiced in doing for a long time. But of course, every situation is different. All the process tools that I have might not always apply. It also varies with what kind of crisis we might be standing in, but it's good to, at least to have some tools to sort of create a foundation. In 2010 to 12, when I studied peace studies in Japan, it was also during the big earthquake in 2011, and being in Tokyo at the time with the so-called triple disaster of a nuclear radiation, a tsunami, and an earthquake, all of a sudden, of course, was something that came very out of the blue. But having been in that situation and knowing that I stay relatively stable and I completely turn into a doer mode and start organizing people is something that just gives me trust in myself, that I can stand in these situations and be relatively firm. But I was lucky back then also to be there on my own and not have a family. And I think if now I have a husband and if I'd had family around me, I probably would have reacted quite differently. So just being open to the emotions that we have, and that our nervous systems sometimes plays tricks on us as well, is something that I've seen. But ultimately, so far, I've been able to trust myself, and I know how I react in these situations, and that gives a certain kind of security, at least for myself, and hopefully also for the team.
Definitely. And in those circumstances, as a leader, how do you help others that maybe are not so good at managing these situations?
So I think I've been lucky also from a very early age to be trained in communication. My first job was as a tourist guide at a museum. So I think from the age of about 13, 14, it's been normal for me to stand in front of a crowd and talk. And of course, telling about Norwegian history is not necessarily a good skill to have, but being able to not be afraid of standing in front of strangers and tell people and try to make sense of something complex in a relatively easy way is a tool that I know that I manage. And I think communication skills in the middle of crisis is probably one of the best tools that you can have to organize people, to make sure that information flows. And that is something that I like to do. It's something that I have been trained to do as well, and have experience with. We live in a multi-channel world, so direct communication is one thing, but during the earthquake in Japan, for the first week, I was asked by the Danish news if I could be reporting back on what was happening in Japan, because I didn't have an external journalist on the ground at the time. So I've also seen how the media mill is working in times of crisis, and know how to communicate with journalists in that sense. So that is something that is helpful, at least. But as I said, every crisis is different. So it's being present and being there with the people, and I guess also just having ice in the stomach and knowing that this too shall pass, but only if we treat each other well throughout the process.
It's quite amazing how the past, when we're in it, we don't see how the dots connect, but after a while, every single experience contributes to making you setting you up for success for the future. So it's definitely your case in it. Amazing. Well, I mean, what my question is, and this is a question I always ask impact leaders, is that in the face of so much inertia, so much difficulty, what keeps you going?
That's a very good question. I guess there's a level of stubbornness in there as well, of not accepting that this is not going to work. So that's one part. It's maybe not a healthy part, but it definitely keeps me going. Success experiences of seeing it working and getting feedback from our former students, volunteers, partners, that it is working is something that is highly motivating and encouraging. And I mean, my studies and my entire work is around innovation, and innovation in one way can be seen as problem solving. So the bigger the problem, the more intrigued I am to see if I can figure out a solution. So I think there's also a level of I don't know, let's call it creativity in there, really trying to build things that haven't existed before and see what the world could be like if these two people were to talk to each other, if we were able to build this thing together. And yeah, that I think it's a combination of all those three, probably many more, but yeah, I think at the core, I know I'm a very curious person. I like building things that didn't exist yet.
Mm-hmm. Do you get inspired by solving the problem that's present to you? Or is it more about the big problem and the opportunity that this could have? Or is it both?
I think it's both. I think I'm more in the smaller things as sort of a part of the bigger thing. So just as a very concrete example, one of my former colleagues from Ukraine recently asked me if I could help organize laptops for kids in Ukraine because of the war. They still need to, of course, continue schooling online, and people in the rural areas and in poor areas, are having difficulties with hardware. And that for me, I mean, I want to have an impact and I want to help, but it's also figure out how on earth do I do that? Like, who do I need to talk to? Like, who are the people who either sit on a lot of laptops or who know somebody who might know somebody who can sit on a lot of laptops? So the overall purpose and the drive is, of course, to support the kids and to support the people who are struggling in Ukraine. But it's also very much about who do I know who can help with this, because I obviously don't have 5,000 laptops in my backyard. So, but I might know somebody who does. And so how can we make this work? And that's, yeah, so it is both for sure, but very much about what is the impact that I can create here and now. So it's tangible.
Yeah, no, I think it's great, because when you're in challenges, you have to look at also the future, because it leads you forward. But then, of course, you want it to be practical, and you want to experience, that you're making that impact now. So it is the present and the future that will lead you forward. Amazing. Yeah. Well, our time is up, and very, very, very quickly, unfortunately. I wish we had more time, but maybe, is there anything that you would love to leave an idea, or let's say one advice to our audience who are persevering in their journey of driving positive change in the world?
I think the most important advice that I can probably give is to start immediately. And the reason why I say that is because I see a lot of entrepreneurs. I'm a mentor of many, especially female social entrepreneurs, and many have this idea of where they want to be, but they're very afraid of getting started. So they will write long business plans and have great ideas that they talk about. But to truly get started and actually to reach out is something that feels like, oh, I'm not ready, I'm not going to do it yet. So what I usually ask people when I coach them is really to think about what is the impact you can have in the next 5 minutes that is bringing you towards your goal. Because if you want to help homeless people, then what could you do in the next 5 minutes to help homeless people? And all of a sudden it would be like, oh, I could donate money to a charity. I could go out and talk to somebody, or I don't know. I can look at what, if I have an old sleeping bag that I could donate. All of a sudden you'll have all these ideas that are very, very concrete. And if you start there, and then you start doing that, and then the next step that you take, so like, what can you do in the next 5 hours or the next 5 days to make a difference? All of a sudden things really start growing. But it's about getting started, and don't hold back. I mean, you don't need to save the world in the next 5 minutes, but if you can change the life or improve the life of somebody, that's already something.
So valuable. The law of small doing.
Absolutely.
I think we all get it wrong. We all try to go for the big thing, but it's the one step at a time that helps us to make the difference. And also it builds our confidence. We're like, okay, I can do this. I can step it up now and step it up now. Amazing.
Absolutely. And you get wonderful feedback as well. So the next step might be more informed. Sometimes the thing that you think is the most, helpful is not always the same, but then and you can course correct.
Very, very true. Well, Anne, it's been absolutely amazing talking to you. Thank you for sharing so transparently, so vulnerably, so openly your journey. And I can't wait to follow your journey.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, thanks for your podcast. And let's keep inspiring each other. That's how we get better.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you.